Welcome to the Savvy Property Investors Podcast, a weekly show that delivers the best hard-hitting property industry news, business advice, and talks that will get you ascending in the real estate industry. Now, here's your host, the amazing award-winning property and business coach, best-selling author, and serial entrepreneur, Miss Sapphire Gray.
Hi everyone, it's Sapphire here. I'm so glad that you can tune in to our show, the Savvy Property Investors Podcast. I'm super excited today because I have my good friend and top auction expert in the UK, Mr. Richard Worrall from Network Auctions. Today we are tackling the world of property auctions, focusing on how not to fall into property pitfalls. So welcome, Richard. So glad to have you on board today.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks for asking me along.
Yeah, brilliant. I want to ask you a few questions to sort of get a really good understanding what we shouldn't do or should do. So, how does the actual process of auctions work?
Okay, it's a fairly simple process. So the way that it works is property is advertised by the auctioneers, viewings take place. And if you're an interested purchaser, you attend the viewing. Obviously, that's a little bit trickier under government current COVID regulations. There's lots of virtual tours that are available so that you can have a look before you actually commit to go and view. But once you've viewed a property, it's then over to you as the purchaser to do your due diligence. And that's a phrase that I'm going to use probably quite a lot during our time together this morning. So doing your due diligence means inspecting the legal pack, getting your solicitor or legal representative to look at the legal pack for you as well is a good idea. And then on the day of the auction, once you've registered to bid, if you are the successful bidder, then on a traditional auction, you will exchange contracts if you're the highest bidder at the close of the auction, and you will pay a 10% non-refundable deposit, and completion is normally 20 working days after the date of the auction. Sometimes it's longer, but that will be stipulated within the legal pack if it is. And on occasions it's shorter, but once again, that will be stipulated within the legal pack. So the process is pretty swift. Most auctioneers tend to launch their catalogue and advertise the lots 3 to 4 weeks before the auction. Sometimes they'll take in later entries, but you've normally got 3 to 4 weeks to view, get your ducks in a row, get yourself registered to bid, and then make sure you've got your finances in place.
Excellent. I like the word that you use, due diligence, because that's a word that I really like to use myself. And it's not to fall into those pitfalls of not actually doing your research and looking at every situation and circumstances that could actually lead you down a road of no return. Brilliant. Thanks for answering that. From your experience, what are the best auction sites available?
Well, from a purchaser's perspective, you've got the main property portals, the likes of Rightmove, On the Market, Zoopla. They're the sort of three main players in the marketplace. But if you're going to do that, make sure that you tick on there that you want auction property, so you can filter it down so that you don't have to trawl through hundreds and hundreds of properties. But there is a company called the Essential Information Group. And the Essential Information Group is basically the right move for auctioneers and people who wish to purchase at auction. And if you are keen or motivated to purchase a property at auction, then looking at the Essential Information Group, I think, is a really good thing to do. They do charge a subscription. I don't think it's that expensive, but what it enables you to do is to set up property alerts for properties that are coming to auction in areas that interest you. Now, that could be the whole of the UK, so you could get alerts for everything that comes to auction, or you can be much more specific to postcoded areas that you're interested in. But Essential Information Group, they hold all the information for all auctioneers in the UK, both residential and commercial. So anything that's coming to auction will be with them. Nearly all the auction houses in the UK use some or all of their back-end systems for making their job a lot easier. So that's why EIG have all of this data on the properties that are becoming available. So that's the one that is specific to auctions. Or alternatively, if you don't want to pay a subscription, then just do your usual trawling through Rightmove, On the Market, Zoopla. The properties that are going to auction should have a banner on them that states they're going to auction.
Okay, brilliant. Tell us about your auction platform, Network Auctions.
So our platform, like most of the main auction houses, we use the Essential Information Group. So at the moment, we are conducting all of our auctions online.
Okay.
Something that we'll sort of cross over onto later on, because sometimes people get a little bit confused with different types of online auctions. So we'll talk about that in a bit. But all auctions at the moment are being conducted online, either with a streamed auctioneer, so you'll actually see the auctioneer and they'll be taking bids and showing and talking about what's happening, or no auctioneer shown, more eBay style. It's very slick, it's very professional, it's very easy for purchasers to use. That's the route that we've chosen to go down since March last year. And the feedback that we've had from purchasers, and interestingly from unsuccessful purchasers, has been fantastic. About how easy it is to use, how they're very happy to do it again, how they like the fact they didn't have to go into an auction room in London and be amongst a lot of other people and feel the pressure of that. So to be able to bid online from your own home, from your kitchen or your lounge or wherever you want to do it, with a cup of coffee or maybe something stronger in your hand. I wouldn't suggest something stronger because that might entice you to bid a little bit more than you might want to. Yeah, the online platforms are very, very good and very user friendly.
Yeah, I know Network Auctions platform is excellent for viewing. I think it's top end, but I feel I'm biased about that. But I really like how it performs, and a lot of people have fed back and said it's really easy to follow through as well, because some sites can be cumbersome, and Network Auctions platform for bidding is not. So brilliant. Well done to you guys. So what are the key questions that you think a property buyer should ask at an auction, and why?
I think in the lead up to buying a property at auction, you should feel comfortable that you can speak to the auctioneers and ask any questions. The auctioneers 90% of the time will know the answers to those questions. If they don't, then they will endeavour to get an answer for you, either from the client or from the client solicitor. So the main thing is, don't be afraid to ask questions. And if you are speaking to somebody who is clearly being a little bit evasive or giving you scant answers, then you should be looking to really get the answer to that question that you're asking.
Yeah.
The other thing, again, comes back to this phrase, due diligence. It's not so much a question, but it is a case of make sure you have access to the auction legal pack. Most auctioneers will want the legal pack uploaded and available for prospective purchasers at least 7 days before the auction. That gives you really enough time to have a look at it. More importantly, if you don't feel comfortable looking at it, put it in front of a professional. Put it in front of your solicitor. Yeah. Now, at the moment, that is a little bit tricky because there are so many transactions going through at the moment. There are, a finite amount of solicitors, and they have a huge workload on at the moment. So even if you're an existing client of a solicitor, they might say to you, Sapphire, Richard, I'm really sorry, I'm snowed under at the moment, I haven't got a chance to do that. Well, there is a fallback position. Again, most of the main auction houses in the UK, including Network Auctions, if you look at the catalogue entry online, there will be an option to review the auction legal pack from a company called AucSpace, AucSpace. And they're a firm of solicitors who have done an overview on the legal pack and highlighted any issues. You normally pay about £90 to £120 for that. Money really well spent if you can't get your solicitor to look at it. Going back to what you said earlier, don't start going down a road without doing your due diligence, because you can spend an awful lot of money for something that you thought was something that isn't, and you can spend a small amount of money to get a professional to have a look at the legal pack to highlight some issues to stop you falling into a big black hole.
I totally agree with that. And I think the fees are relatively low because not standard solicitors will charge you upwards of 250 plus VAT. So that's a good margin to look at when you're getting the legal packs overviewed as well. And it's always a wise thing. It's money well spent, definitely.
And I think, also one of the other things is that, don't be afraid. Again, there's a cost involved, but it's a very small cost compared to what you might be in for, is to get a surveyor to look at the property for you, or at least somebody who you trust who has got knowledge of buildings. Again, that's going to give you comfort. A lot of properties that go to auction, not all, but a lot, go to auction for a reason. And the main reason is that they are probably not suitable for what you and I would call mainstream funding.
That's right.
So the likes of Barclays, Santander, Halifax, your main broker, your main lenders are probably not going to be interested in lending on it. No. Now, that could be because of a relatively small matter, or it could be because of a larger matter. But you need to be comfortable with what you're buying. And if it's quite clear that there is a structural issue with the property, or it's non-standard construction or something like that, if you're looking to refinance it in the future, because a lot of people want to buy at auction, maybe they have funds to do that, but then they're looking to refinance quickly afterwards. There's no point in being stuck with something that is unmortgageable. So again, it's about putting yourself in a good, strong position of all the facts before you make that commitment to buy.
Definitely. And some of the reasons why lenders, your high street lenders won't lend, no kitchens or no working bathrooms. So those could be some of the potential pitfalls in a property. And as you said, non-construction as well. So always check those out prior. And that suggestion of getting a builder in there or somebody who's got that kind of knowledge is absolutely a fantastic advice, because many a times I've taken builders with me to go through a property just to make sure that it's worthy of what I'm actually going to make an offer on as well. Because some of those are the things where you need to know how much you going to actually offer on that property when it goes to auction, if it's got all of these other caveats in it. Brilliant.
Yeah. And I think at the moment it's really interesting. The market is very, very busy. Yeah. There's a huge amount of transactions going through, far more than would normally be happening in a general marketplace. All the stats that are out there from the people who provide these statistics show that clearly. Yeah. However, the lenders are, very conscious of what they're lending on because the market is frothy. Yeah. And, just picking up on some of the things, we've taken things to auction recently. If you're looking to sell a flat that's got an open balcony across the front, like a lot of them do have in London and outer London. So if you've got open balcony with front doors all the way off it, lenders really don't want to lend on those. That's quite prevalent. I've just sold a property at auction where, although all the balconies in the block were away from the property next door, the subject property we sold, their balcony was attached to the property next door. Oh, wow. So anomaly that got turned down by the lenders. Wow. So if there's any small thing, the lenders probably will not lend. So you need to make sure, again, you're in possession of that information, because if you are looking to refinance it afterwards, that's going to be difficult.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. So what do you consider as a good auction deal yourself?
Well, as far as a purchase is concerned, it's the property you want to buy at a price that's really good for you. Yeah. So what constitutes a good deal is very personal, I think. Okay. Interestingly, well, to give you an example, last week we had a property guided at £750,000, a dilapidated house in a stunning area, and the bidding got very, very competitive, and it sold for 1.226 million. Wow. And it was the property next door, the people who own that wanted to buy this particular one, so they had a real personal reason to buy that. But there were other people who were interested in it at a very similar level, but to them that was a great deal. Was it a great deal what they paid for it? Doesn't
Probably
really
not.
matter.
Yeah.
Acquired it now, and so that's a good deal for them. But I think that the main thing is when you're buying at auction, generally speaking, you want to set yourself a limit, particularly if you're an investor and you know, and you've done your sums beforehand, you know how much you should be paying. The temptation, whether you're in a room full of people, when we get back into that environment in the future, hopefully, or whether you're bidding online, the temptation is to keep going a little bit more. And you've got to be pretty firm with yourself, I think, because if you've done your numbers and you know a deal stacks up at a certain level, that's what it stacks up at.
Yeah.
It doesn't stack up at another £3,000, £4,000, £5,000 more.
Exactly. I totally agree with that.
Like what you hear so far? Make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button below. Our podcast is only made possible by great listeners like you. To know more about how to be a part of this podcast as a guest or sponsor, head over to our website, www.savvywomen.co.uk, and register to partner with us. We thank you for your continued support. Now back to our host, Miss Sapphire Gray.
We talked about some pitfalls, but what would you say is the top 5 pitfalls when people make when they're buying property through an auction?
Things to do to avoid the pitfalls are inspect the property. That is difficult at the moment in some circumstances, or it certainly has been over the last months. I was amazed how many properties were selling during the first period of restrictions last year where no viewings were available. We happened to be able to get video tours on nearly everything, either from the client or because videos have been taken beforehand, and people were buying properties just on a video alone. I personally wouldn't do that, but that's my personal choice. Inspect the property, and again comes back to inspect the legal pack. There's a particular document in an auction legal pack that you really should take note of, and it's called the Special Conditions of Sale or Extra Special Conditions of Sale. And in there will be any extras that are in addition to your purchase price. So normally fees that are recovered by the seller or the seller's solicitor. So there could be a contribution towards the seller's auction costs. There could be a contribution towards the seller's legal costs. What's very common to recover in the Special Conditions of Sale is the cost of the searches that are included in the legal pack. That's fair, that's reasonable. If you're buying by private treaty, you'd be paying for those anyway to your solicitor. But the recovery of costs, solicitors-wise and auctioneer-wise, has jumped dramatically in the last 2 to 3 years. So you need to be wary of that. So you've got to look at that document, and also be aware that some solicitors now, either on their own behalf or on instructions from their client, they're now putting the recovery of costs in words and not numbers. So it's quite easy if you're looking for a percentage or a figure or something like that, and you're scanning through a document, that you might miss it if it's been written in words, because £3,000 plus VAT written in words, when you're looking for £3,000 as a figure, can be easily missed. So definitely through the Special Conditions of Sale.
Excellent. Okay, the auctioneering industry has become very competitive, especially for buyers. In your opinion, what are some of the things that one could do to ensure that they stand out during the auctioneering process? And what are the 3 things that a buyer does that kills their opportunity?
Well, one of the things as a buyer that you can do in order to make yourself stand out is have a conversation with the auctioneers in the lead up to the auction to see whether you could purchase the property prior to the auction taking place. You'd still buy on the same terms as if you bought at the auction on the day, but obviously you would be removing your competition. Now, some clients we act for have to sell the property in the public arena, so trustees, executors, that type of thing, and they will normally insist that it goes into the arena. Also, local authorities, housing associations, anything like that. However, there's a large number of private individuals who go to auction because they want certainty of sale. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
They might have had a number of previous abortive transactions on their property and they're just fed up with private treaty, or for whatever reason, but they're private individuals. So for them, the auction process is about getting an exchange of contracts, with a purchaser, 10% non-refundable deposit paid, swift completion. So as a buyer, if you've identified a property that you think is suitable for you, then if you go to the auctioneers and say, I'm interested in purchasing it prior, is that possible? Then they'll let you know whether that is or isn't. And then you could make a pre-auction bid.
Okay.
So the pre-auction bid on exactly the same terms as you would buy as the auction was taking place. But if you come in with a figure that is tempting to the seller to take, they may well take it before the auction. So that's a good way of making yourself stand out. When you're in the arena, there's nothing you can do to make yourself stand out. There could be 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 other people bidding against you on your chosen property. And at that point, you've got to use your common sense and say, I know what it's worth to me. And if somebody's prepared to pay more, that's up to them. I'll let it go. And it's the same in the room as well. It just depends on how strong other people feel about that about the property that you've chosen to have an interest in. So it is difficult to make yourself stand out, but you can make yourself stand out by saying, I'm here, I'm willing, I'm able to contract before the auction. Here's my figure. And if the client says yes, we'll get it done now.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. What are some trends that are taking over the UK auction industries?
Well, this comes back to what I said earlier that we would hopefully touch on again. So we are traditional auctioneers. So we're doing everything online at the moment simply because we can't do it in a room.
That's right.
However, there are a lot of different types of online auctions. And I would urge people to, make sure they know what they're entering into, because the terms of different auctions can be quite different. So we sell on an unconditional basis.
Okay.
And that basically means when you exchange contracts, that's it, it's done. You do your due diligence beforehand. And then once you've exchanged contracts, if you've made a mistake, well, that's tough luck.
Right.
But there are other auctions available whereby you might buy on a conditional contract. And that means that you bid, the auction closes. If you're successful, you've then got a certain amount of time in which to exchange contracts. You'll pay a sum of money, but you've then got maybe 28 days to exchange contracts or something like that. Now, those types of auctions, as a purchaser, you will probably be in for some chunky costs because generally, not all, but generally, you will be paying the seller's fee in its entirety.
Okay.
And a lot of those auctions are 3%, subject to a minimum of £6,000 plus VAT.
Wow.
And you would have to take that into account in addition to your purchase price. So again, it's good for some people. Some people do like it because it gives them a bit of comfort that they can walk away by maybe losing a smaller amount of money. However, if you still need to do your due diligence and all the things you'd normally do. But of course, how I sell, 10% deposit, you're paying up front, and you need to complete, otherwise you'll be in breach of contract. So that's quite an expensive way to make a mistake. But just be aware on the different types of auctions there will be different terms of business. Right,
true. Okay, so what is your, that was our last question, what is your parting shot, Richard? And can you share with our audience what is your number one tip as well?
Okay, well, I think parting shot would be, for me, auctions are still the cleanest, quickest, most direct way to purchase a property. Everybody knows where they stand. Auctions have been around since 500 BC, and there's a very good reason for that. And that is that they're simple to understand. They, as I say, they're quick, they're clean, they're clear. As a purchaser, obviously, you need to put yourself in a position to finance those purchases. But for me, the speed of the transaction, the security of the transaction for the purchaser and the seller is what it's all about.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. And what would be your number one tip?
Number one tip, without doubt, is look at the legal pack. Do your due diligence every time. It's easy to get carried away and make a mistake if you see something last minute. Even if you know the area, even if you think you know the street, even if you think you know the house, you've got to look at the legal pack on that property. It never fails to amaze me how many people, certainly when we were in the room and I could see this happening in front of my eyes, how many people turn up at the auction to bid on a property. The first time they look at the legal pack is 10 minutes before the auction. Well, that's not enough to do your due diligence. And you don't want to be making expensive mistakes. Far better to back away from it if you're not comfortable. We say this to buyers a lot, Sapphire. If you don't feel comfortable or you're unsure, we don't want you to buy something through us and feel that you've made an error afterwards. That's not what it's about. Do your due diligence is my number one tip every time.
Brilliant. So Richard, our listeners may be listening to this and thinking, he's given some really good advice here, some really good points here. How do they get in touch with you? And if they've got a property that they want to put through your auction house, please tell us about your auction house and tell us how we can get in touch with you.
Okay, again, quite simple. So the company I'm an auctioneer with is called Network Auctions, and you can if you just Google the two words Network Auctions, it will come up number one in the Google rankings. You can send us an email via the website to request a valuation on your property. You can register on the database to receive the auction catalogues as and when they're released. So we've got 10 sales this year. Maybe going up to 11, but certainly 10. So that's a good thing to do. We are very easy to find.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time today. Viewers, it was a brilliant podcast today. So you know what to do. Go and share, hit that like button and comment below. Thank you for your time today, Richard. Lovely having you as our guest.
Thank you, Sapphire.
This week's episode of the Savvy Property Investors Podcast was brought to you by our sponsor, the Savvy Women Group. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's show, head over to our website, www.savvywomen.co.uk, to gain access to our free resources and more insights about our guest speaker today. Remember, we make your business our business, so you can unlock your full potential and improve your quality of life.